Please be seated. The court is now back in session. For this afternoon, the chamber will hear testimony of a witness through TCW 842 via video link from France. And Mr. Sakovati is the video link has been organized. Mr. President, the AV unit has made the video link arrangement and the witness is now available. President, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Witness. Good afternoon, Mr. President. President, could you please tell the chamber your full name? And sir, my surname is Toj and my name is Siton. President, thank you, Madam Toj Siton. And what was your date of birth? And sir, I was born on 2nd January 55. Question. And where is your current address? Answer. I lived in Paris. I live at number 20 in Paris. Question. What is your current occupation? Answer. I am a cashier at an engineer university. Question. What are the names of your parents? Answer. My father is Tochet and my mother is Haun. President, thank you, Madam Tochet. As a witness before the chamber, you are required to take an oath or an affirmation according to your belief. Do you agree to that? Answer, yes, I do. President and Mr. Sakovati, could you please proceed with the swearing of the witness? Madam Witness, I now proceed with the swearing of your testimony. Please repeat after me. I solemnly declare that I shall tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please repeat after me. Witness, shall I repeat it? Yes. Witness, I solemnly declare that I shall tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. President and Madam Tojiton, to your best knowledge, do you know whether you are related by blood or by law to any of the two accused? To Chi and Kiel Sampon, or through any of the civil parties admitted in this case? Answer, no, I am not related whatsoever. President, thank you. And as a witness in the proceedings before this chamber, you may refuse to respond to any questions or to any comment which may incriminate you. That is your right against self-incrimination. As for your obligations as a witness, you must respond to all questions posed to you by the bench or the parties. And you must tell the truth that you have known, heard, remembered, experienced, or observed directly about an event or occurrence relevant to the questions that the bench or parties pose to you. And Madam Tositon, have you been interviewed by investigators or the office of the co-investigating judges? If so, how many times, when, and where? Answer: I was interviewed once in Paris in 2009. That was the only time. President, thank you. And before you appear at the current location for your testimony, have you read or reviewed the written record of your statement that you provided to OCIG investigators in Paris in order to refresh your memory? Answer: yes, I have. President, thank you. And to the best of your knowledge, can you tell whether the written record of your interview that you have read to refresh your memory is consistent with what you told the investigators? Answer: the investigators came to meet me in 2009 and I spoke to them. And the record is correct. However, there is one mistake. When I first came to Cambodia in 2006, there were staff from the court who came to meet me. And we had a meal at a restaurant. The staff wanted to ask me some questions. And last night, from what I reviewed, some answers are not correct. Because at the time I was not told about the details of my responses. However, the staff took notes of my answers. And in the Khmer statement, some parts are not correct. I was not told that the process was taken place because the staff did not tell me the truth. That would be the process. So some parts of the statement in 2006 are not correct. President, thank you. However, basically, after you review the written record of your statement, whether the statements are correct except some minor inconsistencies that you have raised. Answer: yes, yes. Most parts of the statements are correct. President, thank you. And pursuant to Rule 91B of the ECCC internal rules, the Chamber gives the floor first to the co-prosecutors to put question to Madame Tositon, and the co-prosecutors and the lead co-lawyers have a combined time of 2 sessions. You have the floor.
Merci, bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, the parties. Good afternoon, Mrs. Tositon. Thank you. I will be putting questions to you this afternoon and also for about 30 minutes tomorrow, I think. I would like you to be very concise in your answers. If I need any further details, I'll put further questions to you. If you are more at home in Khmer, no problem. And if you prefer to speak in French, I think you can also ask the President to allow you to speak in French. I would like to broach 3 subjects essentially with you. your marriage, your meetings, and the roles of the accused, Nonchia and Kyosampan, as well as disappearances in the Ministry of Social Affairs. I'll therefore dwell on that, but for a start, let me put some questions to you regarding your past and what you did, essentially between 1975 and 1979. Now, first question. Can you tell us when you joined the revolution before 1975, and what were your reasons for joining the revolution? I wouldn't like you to give a very elaborate answer to this question.
May I now respond? Shall I respond in Khmer or in French? President, it is up to you, Madam Witness. If you decide to use a language which is convenient for you, then you may do so, since you know the two languages. And if you have not used your Khmer for a long time and you find it difficult, then you may choose French. But please use one language only. So once you make your decision, let us know, then you will be allowed to speak that in that language. Witness. Thank you, Mr. President.
At the time, I had left because my sister-in-law had asked me, at the time I was age 16, she had come to ask my mother to accompany her because she had 3 children who were still very small, aged 3, 5, and 7. She had come to ask my mother to allow me to accompany her to meet her husband, who was my brother.
Je me permets de vous interrompre. Je me permets de vous interrompre.
May I interrupt you, madam? As a matter of fact, you can speak continuously without any breaks because there is simultaneous interpretation in Khmer and English. So you should only use the French channel. As such, you'll be able to speak more fluently and more rapidly. Thank you. And that is why I had left with my sister-in-law at the time. And I was in the jungle with them. That is why I was in the jungle with them. Initially, I thought that all I had to do was to accompany them, but I didn't think that it was not going to be possible for me to go back.
Donc, question suivante.
Next question. Was your brother indeed Tukrin, alias Queen, who subsequently, after 1975, was the director of the Kampong Som port? That is correct. Did you join the revolution in 1972?
It was in 1972.
Merci. Alors,
Thank you. I'll now put some questions to you regarding what you did after the 17th of April 1975. Very quickly. What were the duties and responsibilities you had after the 17th of April 1975? Where precisely did you work?
Initially, after Phnom Penh fell, I had to go to the Swiss hospital because the medics were instructed to go there. And I worked with the medicines there for 2 to 3 months, since at the time not many people understood the French language. May I continue?
En fait, la difficulté, c'est...
As a matter of fact, the difficulty is that you utter a sentence and you stop for a few seconds and then you continue. So you should just give your entire answer without worrying about stopping and resuming. Can you now tell us what ministry was the ministry in charge of the hospital you worked for?
Initially, I worked with Dupont, who was a dentist. And after the country fell, we had to go to a Russian hospital. I worked there for about 3 months to arrange their medicine, and because I knew how to read French, so I worked with the medicines for 3 months. I had to read the labels on those medicines. After that, the Ministry of Social Affairs needed people, and since I worked in a hospital and I worked with medicine with another co-worker, and we also had 2 supervisors, so they assigned me to the Ministry of Social Affairs to work with the medicines there, since the ministry needed to gather medicines from all over Phnom Penh to store it in the ministry. And initially, I was one of the 3 people in the group. There was a pharmacist, and there was another woman who was a bit younger than me. The 3 of us had to gather the medicines and to register them. And the pharmacy knew a lot of pharmacies, so the person took us there to collect and to register those medicines. And they were not yet sent to the Ministry of Social Affairs.
Thank you. I'll interrupt you and put another question to you. First of all, regarding your work at the Russian hospital, I believe it was known as the 17th April Hospital at the time. Who was your immediate superior at the 17th April Hospital at the time, and who was the director of that hospital?
The overall chief was initially the wife of Chief All, and after Chief All disappeared, his wife remained in the hospital for 5 to 6 months. As for my supervisor, I worked with my co-worker there, and I assisted my supervisor.
Est-ce que vous pourriez donner...
Can you give us the name of your supervisor and the name of the wife of Chief All?
The revolutionary name was Bong Sai. but I do not recall the native name. And a few months later, the person disappeared. I no longer saw the person or heard of the name. And I worked for the Ministry of Social Affairs under the supervision of Bong Su. And the person about Bong Su was Madame Ieng Thiret, alias Minh Pia. Over there, I organized the medicines since I knew how to read the French. And the medicines that I registered with a pharmacian. Later on, I did not know about the pharmacian, but I went along with other people to gather medicines from Phnom Penh and to store them at the Ministry of Social Affairs.
Merci.
Thank you. Let us return to Bong Se. You have stated that after the arrest of her husband, after the disappearance of her husband, rather, she stayed at the hospital for 5 to 6 months. That is the 17th April hospital. Do you recall during what period she herself disappeared? Please respond as briefly as possible.
The person disappeared 3 or 4 months after 17 April. While I was there, I recalled that the person was upset, but I did not know the nature of such why the person was upset. And I knew that the person was so concerned about own safety. And since I left the hospital, I no longer had any further contact with the staff in that old place.
Est-ce que par la suite,
did you subsequently hear what I say the director of that hospital was accused of any wrongdoing? As you've told us, Ieng Thiret and Su were your superiors. Did they tell you whether she may have betrayed the party?
I did not know anything for certain at the time, and I was not aware of any arrest. But the name Bong Se was no longer heard at the hospital. However, under which condition the person was disappeared or whether the person was transferred elsewhere or arrested, I do not know.
vous avez donné une approximation?
You gave a rough approximate period, date as to when she disappeared. You said 3 to 4 months after the 17th of April. We have on record the Confessions of Se, also called Len Sing Kat, and Se was her revolutionary name, was director of the 17th April Hospital, and she was age 38. For the parties, the reference is E3/496, 318 pages, and the date of arrest is 17th of December 1977, and the date of execution is the 31st of March 1978. And we also have other parts of the confessions, E3/4377 and E3/18757. We also have several lists of S21 prisoners who also mention a name. The first is E3/2276, and the ERN in English is 00887842, and in Khmer 00040788. There is no French. The date of entry into S21, as she mentions, is the 17th of December 1977. Madam, does this refresh your memory as to the fact that Say was not arrested that 3 or 4 months after the 17th of April, but long after that?
I do not know for certain, because I did not have any further contact with that hospital. To my understanding, the name was no longer spoken of after I left for the Ministry of Social Affairs. The person could mainly be sent somewhere else first before the person was transferred to S21. And are you sure about the date? Because after I left for the Ministry of Social Affairs, I no longer had any contact with that hospital. But to my recollection, the name was no longer spoken of since after I left. It's because of my unavailability to contact the hospital, and I didn't know what happened later on.
Les dates sont celles qui figurent.
The dates are those that are indeed on record. Let us now talk about your work at the Ministry of Social Affairs and at K2. Is it correct to say that Ingrid was in charge of all civilian hospitals in Phnom Penh, as well as the production of medicines, as well as the storage thereof?
In fact, she was in charge of social affairs, in charge of hospitals, and in charge of medicine production.
De santé.
She was Minister of Foreign Affairs, or rather, Minister of Health.
So she was in charge of the health as well as the social affairs. President, Madam Thongsitorn, could you please use one language during the course of your testimony? Because when you use two languages at the same time, it is difficult since you switch back and forth. Witness. It is my habit. I actually want to speak Khmer, but since I've been living in France for a long time, and consciously I speak French, and in fact I like to speak French, and if I inadvertently speak French, then I would follow it later on with the Khmer language. Sometimes I don't realize that I speak French, and my apology for that. President, thank you. And yes, co-prosecutor, you may continue.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said a while ago that your immediate superior was Sue, and that above her was Ingrid. Can I therefore conclude that you were a cadre of the Ministry of Social Affairs? And if yes, can you tell us how many people worked under your authority?
There were over 20 people. That is when we organize the medicines. However, sometimes young people were sent from provinces to us, and they would stay there provisionally. Later on, they will be sent to the medicine production units. They would be there for a period of time, and then they left. When medicines arrived, and usually from China, as well as the medicines left in Phnom Penh, I was given a statistics of the size of provinces, and then I would distribute those medicines proportionally according to the data that I have. There was one person who was influenced in French and who came from France, who would come to assist me because the person was more knowledgeable than me. However, the person did not like that kind of work. For that reason, the person had some issues, because the person was disappointed when he came to Cambodia, and to my understanding, the person was brought in to be in charge of the hospital due to the educational background and experience. But since he was not active, the person was not active in work performance, and I had to step in and organize those works. So my main duty was to distribute medicines that we received. As for the new medicines,
I'm going to interrupt you. I'd like to have briefer responses if you can, because we have quite a limited amount of time and there are still many questions to be asked. You spoke about a person who came from France, who experienced some problems. Can you give us his name and just tell us very briefly in a couple words what happened to him?
The person's name, whose original name I cannot recall it. He came with my husband and along with another man. 3 of them came from France, and they came to work at Ingteret's place.
D'accord, on reviendra.
All right, we'll come back later to what finally happened to him. You were relatively highly placed in the hierarchy in the Ministry of Social Affairs, if I've understood correctly. Were you at any time a member of the Communist Party of Kampuchea, or a candidate member?
I never entered, and I was not allowed to enter either.
Alors, concernant...
So regarding the functioning of the Ministry of Social Affairs, were there any large annual or biannual meetings which brought together the many combatants and staff that were under the ministry?
Yes, there were. There were meetings. There were meetings at hospitals, and there was also meetings that conducted once every 1 year or 2 years, attended by people from hospitals and medicine production.
Lors de ces...
During these large meetings, was Ingterit present? Did she chair the meetings?
Yes, she, along with Bong Su, chaired the meetings, but most of the time it was Bong Su. She was the one who came to preside the meetings, over the meetings than Ieng Thirit.
Lors de ces grandes assemblées,
During these large assemblies, which Bong Su or Ieng Thirit chaired, did either of these two cadres speak of internal enemies who could possibly be hiding within the Ministry of Social Affairs?
Yes, they said about the enemy. It's normal that in each society there was talking about such aspects.
And at the time, who were considered to be enemies, either internal or external? Did Ieng Thirit or Bong Su tell you how you could tell who was an enemy and who was not?
They only said that the enemy must be smashed. But I'm not sure whether there existed such a principle. But I can say that during meetings, they encourage us to defend Angka. And we had to do self-criticism. We did this in small meetings. And during the big meetings, we also did the same, that we had to smash the enemy.
d'accord.
All right. Did Ieng Thirit or Su also talk about traitors?
Sometimes they talked or mentioned about the names of those who had disappeared. They raised the names of those who had disappeared during big meetings. But there were also some disappearance of people whose names were not raised during meetings. And I did not understand why sometimes they mentioned the names of some people, at other times they did not mention.
Pour rebondir sur...
To come back to what you said, I wonder if you recognize someone who worked as a driver for Ieng Thirit from the end of 1977 to the beginning of 1979, who was called Kam Pang or Pan Van. He was the son of the secretary of Sector 105.
I did not know that person clearly, but I knew a driver. I knew the person was a driver, but I was not clear, or I did not know clearly about the person's background.
D'accord.
All right. I would like to read to you an excerpt of a WRI that this driver, who was interrogated by the co-investigating judges, E3/447, answers 14, 31, and 32. And before citing that excerpt, I want to say that he spoke of the arrest of Su and Ye Pak, who was the head of a medicine factory, and this was in reference to case 7, the messenger, and this is what Kipan said in answer 14. After having met with the Ministry of Social Affairs, Yipia said that these two people were traitors. Reading a memo from K3. Question 31. Madame Ingterit, did she hold a meeting on the purges in order to follow up on the persons who were to be arrested? And Kampan's response: at the time, the follow-up meetings occurred regularly. This is when people denounced and questioned others in order to see if the enemies that had infiltrated them were. In 32, we learned this through various documents on specific situations, on fighting against the Vietnamese infiltrated enemies, experiences of various provinces, and the confessions of various people. Ye Pia gave these courses herself. End quote. What is your reaction to this? You yourself spoke about the fact that Ingterit had cited some names and sometimes did not cite the names. So does what Kampan said seem correct to you?
For example, during a meeting, to my recollection, there was a person who was a dentist. He was a student of DPON. After the fall, he came to work at the hospital, and he said about the disappearance of people. For example, the new people. I saw a family of new people. They disappeared, and their disappearance was not mentioned. I don't know whether it was a serious case or light case. They were taken away and smashed, but their disappearance were not mentioned. President, Madam, you said the incident happened whether after 17 January or 17 April 1975. Maybe you got confused with the date. Perhaps it was after 17 April 1975. Answer: yes, it was in April. It was on the 17th of April.
Perhaps just one final question. I don't know if Mr. President would then like to take the break. Kampang spoke about the fact that there was a time when people were targeting others in order to find enemies who had infiltrated them. Were you still at the ministry during this time? And can you tell us if you agree with him as of when this environment started to reign in the ministry?
When people in the ministry started to investigate it on each other, the situation of such incident intensified in late 1977, early 1978. In 1976, the situation was not tense yet. So when the situation became intensified, I myself was also monitored and investigated because I had a husband who were to be taken out. And during that period, the situation of our mentality became tense because we were under monitored by each other.
Avant de changer de sujet.
Before changing topics and speaking about your marriage, did you ever hear Ingrid during these great meetings or in small meetings or even just conversations with you, did you ever hear her talk about the Yun or hereditary Vietnamese enemies?
Yes, she talked about the Yun. She talked about the Yun, the American, the CIA, and the KGB of Russia. These were the three groups that she talked about. The Yun was in fact the last group. In fact, the groups that they were really worried about were the CIA and the KGB.
Est-ce qu'elle a jamais blâmé devant?
Did she ever in front of you blame the Vietnamese for having infiltrated the ranks of her own ministry?
She did not talk about whether the UN embedded within the ministry, but generally there were them who hidden internally or embedded in the environment all around us.
Monsieur le Président, je voudrais aborder le...
Mr. President, I would like to begin speaking about the marriage of the witness. Should I continue or not, since we were a little late in starting?
Alors, Madame le...
So, Madam Witness, we will be coming back later to the subject of disappearances within the Ministry of Social Affairs. But concerning your marriage, could you tell us in which period, which date, in which year your marriage took place, and where the wedding was held?
I got married in 1976. It was in September. That was in late 1976. The meeting took place at the Ministry of Social Affairs office. And there were 3 couples arranged to marry on that day. There was 3, my couple and another couple from France. The name was Thorn. There were 3 couples. Bongsu. Bongsu was presiding over the ceremony. She acted as our parents during the wedding.
Est-ce que c'était le premier mariage?
Was this the first collective wedding that was organized within your ministry? or had there already been others before?
I cannot recall it well. I cannot recall it well. But at that time, there were 3 couples who were arranged to marry on that day. But later on, there was also a marriage arranged. But I cannot recall it well as to how many couples.
Pourquoi?
Why, as far as you know, were these weddings arranged? What goal was Ankar pursuing with these marriages? Did Su or Ing Chirit talk to you about this?
They did not tell us about that. But they said that Ankar acted as our parents during the wedding ceremony. People of my age who were in their 20s, either from the hospitals or the Ministry of Social Affairs, they were arranged to get married by Ankar. It was Ankar who were the one deciding who to marry who. And based on my understanding, because we were in our 20s, it was the appropriate time to get married. And it was Ankar who decided on our marriage. We reached the age for marriage, but there was no policy allowing us to get married to the one whom we love. The one whom we would marry were decided by Ankar.
Vous a-t-on jamais...
Were you ever told that Ankar had the intention of rapidly increasing Cambodia's population?
No, they did not say so. I never heard such statement.
Qui vous a parlé la première fois du fait que vous alliez...
Who first spoke to you about the fact that you would be getting married?
The person who came to tell me first was the one who worked with me. Her husband worked with Bong Su in the Ministry of Social Affairs. In the Ministry of Social Affairs, besides Ing Theret, Bong Su was the chief of the office. And there was another person who was Bong Su's deputy, who was a Khmer Leur, and his wife was also a Khmer Leur. She came to tell me that Ankar now wanted to arrange marriage for me, so whether I agree or not. So it was the person who worked with me, whom was the wife of Bong Su's deputy. She was Khmer Leur, ethnic Khmer Leur, and she the one who asked me.
Est-ce que Su...
Did Su herself also speak to you of this before your marriage?
No,
No, she didn't.
Vous avez parlé...
You spoke earlier about the fact that you did not have the choice. There was no policy for marrying the person that one loved. When you were told that you would be getting married, did you know whom you would be marrying? Or at least, when did you learn who you would be marrying?
I did not understand your question clearly. Rather, I did not understand their request clearly. Initially, I refused because I did not love my husband. I told her that I did not want to have a husband yet. Later on, she came to ask me again. And when she came to ask me again, I told her that if Anka really wanted me to get married, Anka had to ensure to me that about the background of my husband. Although my husband came from France, but I did not know whether he already had a wife. Whether she had a French wife. I was reluctant at that time. I could not get married to someone whom I did not know clearly. I met him only once and we lived separately. So during the first request or approach, I refused. But during the second approach, I told her that if Anka wanted me to get married, Anka had to guarantee to me what I concerned was not about whether he came from France or not, but whether he had a wife or a fiancé before that. Because he used to live in France, so I did not know whether he had a French girlfriend. President, the chamber would like to inform parties that the chamber will not take a rest during this afternoon session because we need to compensate for the time we lost during the early sessions. And that is the first point that the chamber would like to inform. And the second point is that the chamber would like to instruct to the WISU and court officer to arrange for the travel to the accommodation of civil party to TCCP 223, and please bring him back to the courtroom tomorrow morning. And now you may proceed. Co-prosecutor.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Witness, you said in your WRI with the investigators from the OCIG at E35305, in French 0342208, in Khmer 00349555, and in English 00345228, going on to 29, you said the following: Madam Su, my supervisor, decided, following Ingtarit, that I should get married with Vasai. At this time, under the Khmer Rouge regime, it was the leaders, the authority figures who decided this type of thing. We were not allowed to choose who we wished to marry. I myself was quite interested in the personal secretary of Ingtarit, but I could not move forward with this decision, and I absolutely could not allow myself to show or have any type of romantic relationship with a man, because that was a crime, end quote. So in this excerpt, you're saying that it is Madame Su who arranged your marriage with the approval of Ying Terit. Can you explain to us when you learned that it was Su and Ying Terit who had decided on your behalf who you would be marrying?
Before the decision was made for me to marriage, about 3 or 4 months before that, I was approached and asked about the wedding. In fact, I had a love feeling toward her secretary because I met him more often, and his appearance was also better than my husband's. But I had no choice to make regarding the selection of my own husband. I had to force myself to get married to my husband, because if I refused, I would be arranged to get married with workers or farmers. Because Bong Su said that she also wanted me to get married with a driver who transported supplies to the kitchen. For me, I could not get married to an illiterate person. So when I could not get married to the person whom I loved, I had to get married to an intellectual. My husband was an intellectual. I decided to get married to him. He was an educated person, not an illiterate one. Although I did not love my husband, I had to get married to him. It's better to get married to him than to marry the illiterate persons.
Est-ce que dans le processus
In the process that led to the celebration of the marriage, or the solemn declaration you made regarding marriage, did Ying Terit say anything to convince you to get married?
She did not. It was Bong Su. And in fact, I did not have a direct communication with Ying Terit. I only had contact with Bong Su, who was my immediate supervisor. I never heard Ying Terit say anything in this aspect. And to my knowledge, Bong Su knew my husband. Bong Su says that in the past in Phnom Penh, Bong Su knew my husband and his family. So Bong Su spoke to me about that before I got married.
Alors, est-ce que des membres de votre famille
Did your family members, as well as your brother Tutrin, attend your wedding?
No, they did not. And they did not know my husband as well. Since after I left, I never had any further communication with my brother. I didn't have time to visit my parents since after I left them in 1972.
Alors, lors de la célébration,
During the marriage celebration, you did say that it was Bang Su who had celebrated the marriage. What did Bang Su say on that occasion? Did she deliver a speech, a short speech? Did she say anything as to the expectations of Angkar, of the couples who are married on that day?
No,
No, she did not say much. She says that we were lucky that we got married during the periods that Angkar organized such a marriage for us.
Lors de la célébration,
During the celebration of the marriage or the oath-taking or thereafter, did you receive any explicit or implicit instructions to consummate the marriage?
No, the matter was not raised. During the time, such matter was not spoken of. This is in French moralité, or the morality issue, that is in terms of consummation of marriage. Such matter was not spoken of.
pour autant, est-ce que les autorités
As such, had the authorities at the ministry organized or made arrangements for the different couples to sleep together on the first night, that is the wedding night, and subsequent nights?
No.
Je vais être plus clair peut-être.
I'll try to be clearer, and I'll perhaps quote what you told the investigators, and it is WRIE3/378, and the page in Khmer is 003495390240. In French, it is 00342203, and in English, 00345541. And this is what you stated, and I quote, "Let me point out to you that my spouse and myself, during that period, lived separately. I was housed with the others in the building of the Ministry of Social Affairs. My husband was also living somewhere else. But when we needed some intimacy far from the others, Mrs. Su gave us a room in her home. As from the day when I heard of the disappearance of Asai's family, Mrs. Su asked us to no longer come to her place with my husband." End of quote. Free translation. In this extract, it does appear, nevertheless, that Mrs. Su played a role in assisting you to have some moments of intimacy. Did she do the same for the other couples who got married on the same day as yourself?
I was at her house because it was a double-story villa. I lived on the upper floor, and there was another room on the upper floor, and there was a woman who got married to a court who came also from France. She was one of the three couples. We were in a separate room from this couple. However, we were on the same floor, and another couple lived elsewhere in another house. And Bo Su told me that her parents and siblings were taken away, so she told me to stop living there and that I should go to live in another house. And that is the house that the third couple was living. It was a kind of a flat, while Su's house was a villa.
D'accord. À la suite du mariage,
Very well. Following your marriage in September 1976, when exactly did you become pregnant and when did you have your baby?
ខ្ញុំផ្ទៃពោះ
President, witness, please hold on. And Defense Counsel Copper, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President. It's all very interesting evidence, but I thought, and I've said this many times before now, that we are in the segment about the role of the accused. First we hear questions about Ministry of Social Affairs, now we hear questions about the marriage of this particular witness. Again, why are we hearing this person in this last segment where there are so many more important witnesses, such as Heng Samrin, for instance, who could testify?
merci, Monsieur.
If I may respond, Mr. President, thank you. I started with marriages, and I will talk about the role of the accused and any meetings the witness may have had with the accused. I will also talk about other disappearances and arrests at the ministry that are directly related to S21. There are three themes that are squarely in the scope of this trial, and I would like to broach those topics in a certain order. And this witness has been placed by the chamber within the framework of the role of the accused. That is a choice I respect. The prosecution had proposed that this witness should testify on internal purges rather than on marriages. So I'll have a couple of questions on the marriages, and then I'll return to the role of the accused, Mr. President.
Yes, you may proceed. However, the observation by the defense counsel is valid because the scheduling here, the witness is according to the segment of facts which your questions should focus. As for other facts, they are secondary, and so please use the time effectively. And if you talk about relevancy, everything is related to one another, because all those facts occurred throughout the country. But you need to respect the scope of the trial as well as the facts that are being tried. So please, your questions will be prioritized according to the main facts, and please use the time wisely. And here we try not to have a short rest in order to compensate for the time lost, because I'm concerned that if the witness cannot be heard according to the way we schedule, it's going to have further impacts on the AV unit, for example, and on the recalling of other civil parties. And that is not a good thing. So please respect the segment of the trial and the facts which are being tried.
Bien. Juste la...
Very well. Just one last question, and we will talk of the consequences of the marriage later on. Did you become pregnant, and when did you have your baby?
ខ្ញុំ
5 or 6 months after, I got pregnant and delivered my baby. In January, my baby was born on the 13th of January 1978.
Alors j'en viens.
Now I would like to broach another topic, that of your meetings, including meetings with Nunchia and Kisampan, if you did have such meetings, and the role of those persons in democratic Cambodia, what you heard, what you saw, and what you witnessed. Did you see Nunchia during the democratic Cambodia regime, and if yes, on what occasions?
Yes, I saw him 2 or 3 times. The first time it was in 1975 when I went to register medicines at the Phnom Penh hospital. The 3 of us saw him. And at the time I did not know who Nunchia was. He came in a jeep with his bodyguards and his driver. He came to see us. At the time, there were no people living in Phnom Penh. So when we were outside to gather the medicines, he asked us where we came from. And we told him that we came from the Ministry of Social Affairs. And that is my first encounter with him in 1975. That is 5 or 6 months after we came to Phnom Penh. And the second encounter, it was during a meeting in 1976. There were many meetings that happened that year, and the situation was tense. And there were many participants in the meeting. I only knew my colleagues who came from the ministry. However, there were other participants, young and old, from other ministries. And during the meeting, he was the one who spoke. He spoke about the Cambodia situation. And at the time, I did not know Pol Pot or other people, but I saw him speak. And my third encounter was when he came to the Ministry of Social Affairs. At that time, I had known Su already, and he came to see Bong Su. So I saw him coming to see Bong Su. And these are the 3 encounters that I saw Nunchia.
Alors, concernant la chronologie,
Now, regarding chronology, and as regards specifically the third meeting, the third time you saw him, that was at K2. Was that before or after the meeting of 1976 when he took the floor?
Yep.
I cannot recall it clearly whether it was before or after, because at that time people were not put in different categories yet. There were meetings where a lot of where hundreds of participants attended. Or could be the number of participants could run into thousands, and that happened in 1976. The first time I saw him, I did not know who he was, because I didn't know of his position, of his senior leadership.
lorsqu'il est venu au ministère,
When he came to the ministry, that is K2, did he also go there to attend a meeting? You have stated that he came to see Bang Su. Did he also attend a meeting that you yourself attended?
No, not at the time. And I didn't know whether a meeting took place. I was outside. And before the Ministry of Social Affairs was fully established, I had not known Iltirat in person. So when I saw him walking across us, he was walking to see Bong Su, who was in charge of that office. And allow me to confirm whether I didn't know whether there was a meeting or not. And because Bong Su was in charge there, he went to see Bong Su. And there were no other people there that he could see, because besides Bong Su, there were only young children or people.
Est-ce que Bong Su ou Ye Pia
Did Bong Su or Ye Pia, that is Young Tiri, tell you about the relations that existed, if at all there were such relations, between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Social Affairs, and Nuon Chia?
No, they never mentioned that. There were two types of meetings during the regime. The first meeting is for those who were party members, and then a general meeting where I attended because I was not a party member, and for that reason I did not know anything concerning the secrets of the party. As for general meetings, everyone could attend, and I also participated in such meetings.
Council's microphone, please.
Pardon. Au dossier figure un document E.
On record, we have E3/1733. That is a record of a meeting of the Standing Committee of the 9th of October 1975. On the first page, it said in all three languages that Comrade Sub-Secretary in charge of the work of the party, social affairs, culture, propaganda, and education. Whereas Comrade Pia was in charge of culture, social affairs, and foreign affairs. And the name of Comrade Pia appears on page 2 of this document. Can you confirm that you were never informed of the fact that Nuon Chia had any authority over the Ministry of Social Affairs?
I did not know because they never said anything about that. However, there was one instance that there was a woman who was a Khmer Chinese interpreter, and she got married to her husband, and I knew that her husband was imprisoned during the Samdach regime. Later on, the husband was released, and the husband went to work with the Khmer Rouge in the jungle. The woman did not live with us in the flat, however, she lives in a villa with her husband. And she says that her husband worked with Bong. And one day she says she no longer had a right to live in that villa, because when Nuchi came in his vehicle and asked who lived in that big house, and she says that she was living there with her husband. And then Nuchi said, she was no longer allowed to live in that house, and for that reason she could come and live with us. And only when her husband came, then she would allow us to meet her husband in that house. And that was the same thing regarding my husband, because when my husband came, I would go to see my husband at Bong Su's house. And I thought that I thought that Nujie was powerful because he could remove the woman from living in that house. And that she had to come and live with us. So it means that she even had the more superior rights than Ian Tirith, because Ian Tirith was above Bong Su. So I thought to myself that Nujie had a superior role, although I did not know in detail. President, please wait for 1 minute as we have to change this. Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you may resume.
Oui, Madame le témoin.
Madam Witness, did Ian Tirith often leave the ministry, to your knowledge, to attend meetings with his superiors or superior? Did Ian Tirith ever tell you about this? Were you able to hear anything in that regard?
No, this matter is far distant from me. I was never told about any meeting.
Est-ce que vous avez jamais entendu parler?
Did you ever hear of other places apart from K2 called K1 or K3?
I do not understand your question. However, I know that K1 was her husband's ministry, and K2 was her ministry. So, what is actually your question?
Oui, je voulais savoir si vous aviez entendu.
I wanted to know whether you ever heard of K1 and K3 and what they meant, and also whether you knew who worked there and lived there.
I never went to K1, although I know that it was a ministry of foreign affairs of Ieng Sari. As for K3, I am not that familiar with K3. It could be for hospital.
Est-ce que vous pensez...
Don't you think you are mixing K1 with D1? You're mixing up K1 with D1.
Yeah, maybe. K1 was the medicine production place. As for K series, I am not that familiar with. Although I know that there was a laboratory which was under the charge of her daughter, and it was located at Chui Chongwa. And the second daughter, the youngest daughter,
C'était plutôt des initiales P.
The laboratory was known by the initials PH. But let us press on. Madam Witness, did you ever attend a meeting with the highest officials of the CPK and cadres of the Ministry of Social Affairs in order to do an assessment of an entire year of the work of the ministry? And if not, did you ever hear anybody talk about that?
Witness, please hold on. Castle Copper, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. President, I object to this question. A witness has just indicated that she was never a member of the CPK, never became a member of the CPK, so she couldn't possibly say who would have been the highest ranking CPK officials. So it's asking for speculation.
Monsieur le Président, ma question était toute.
Mr. President, my question was different. I wanted to know whether she attended any meetings with officials of the CPK and members of the Ministry of Social Affairs with a view to carrying out an assessment of the work of the ministry. And I said if she had not attended such meetings, did she at least hear anybody talk about them?
Being not a member of the CPK, she cannot say anything about who is a CPK member. It's not like they had it on their shirts or something.
But somebody could have told her. I think that was the prosecutor's point. So why don't we let him see if he gets to an answer?
Madame le témoin, est-ce que vous avez entendu parler?
Madam Witness, did you ever hear of this type of meeting bringing together the secretary, the deputy secretary, or other leaders of the CPK with cadres from the Ministry of Social Affairs?
I did not know regarding that issue. As I told you earlier, that because I was not a party member, I had no right to attend the meeting that was designated specifically for party members. I attended only the general meeting. So I was not aware of the secrecies in those meetings.
J'en reviens alors à la réunion.
So I'll come back to the meeting of 76, the large meeting where you said that Nguyen Chia had spoken. Could you tell us what was the occasion for holding this meeting? Where did it take place and how many participants were there?
It was in Phnom Penh, but I did not know the specific location in Phnom Penh because I went with other people. It took place after the Khmer won the victory. There were a large number of people attended the event. And during that large gathering, they said that now the Khmer received the victory. The situation was not tense yet. Whoever participated in the movement, because I was not considered as the category of new people, I had the right to attend that large gathering during which we were told about the victory.
Et pour bien comprendre.
And just to better understand, you talked about 76 earlier, and also of the victory. Perhaps that was the 17th April victory. Did you mean to say that this meeting took place in 76, but was talking about and concerning the April 17th victory, or am I wrong about that?
I did not understand the question clearly. Let me think. It was maybe my confusion. Yeah, it was in 1975. The meeting took place soon after the Khmer Rouge entered the city.
Est-ce que vous
Do you remember what Nguyen Chia spoke about on this occasion, aside from congratulating everyone on the victory?
précisément
More particularly, did he speak about what would happen to the Lone No soldiers and authorities?
He did not say about that. But to my understanding, there were separate meetings for those who were party members and those who were not. To my understanding, those who were officials of the Tribunal regime were not spared.
dernier sujet.
So, last question about Ing Chirit and Nguyen Chia. I would like to get your reaction about whether Ing Chirit spoke about these relations before they were considered incapable of participating in the trial. We've spoken about this a lot, but in the transcript hearing of the pretrial chamber of the 24th February 2009, which is E3/39, this is what Ing Chirit said around 11:59. All of my students were arrested and executed, and this was all Nguyen Chia's fault. Don't lump me together with Nguyen Chia, because he's the one who destroyed my students. This was unfair. Nguyen Chia, he's the one who did these things. And I continue at 12:05. Ing Chirit also said, please allow me, if you would, Mr. President, to conclude. When Nguyen Chia brought my students to be killed by King Gyeok-eov, this is when I began to know what was going on and who was doing what. There was still one student, and I trusted him with the task of leading and doing the work of the office. All of the others who had participated in repairing the pharmaceutical factories and the hospital had already been executed. End quote. So my question is as follows. During the Democratic Kampuchea period, did you ever hear Ing Chirit talk about bad relations, poor relations with Nguyen Chia, who was ever the plan at the time to arrest the cadres of the ministry, or what she calls her students?
Yes, Mr. President, I object to this question. I'm not sure where to begin even. It's wrong on so many levels. First of all, the prosecution is reading something that Ingrid said before the pretrial chamber many years after the facts, in a state that we all know wasn't a state of mental fitness. Quoting this statement from the pretrial chamber when she was in such state is, I think, absolutely out of order. Of course, in addition, it is completely leading by reading this to the witness first and then ask for a comment. So I think, at least on these two points, the question should be forbidden.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, regardless of what one can think about the state of health of Ying Chirit in 2009, I believe that it's only in 2012 that she was declared not able to proceed with the trial. So I think all the tests that were previously administered were favorable, and the doctor said that she could have been able to assure her defense. So it is the lawyer of Nunchio who's saying that we're reading someone's testimony or someone's statement and then ask for reactions to it. I'm surprised he's objecting to this because he does it all the time. I would like to ask your permission, Mr. President, to continue.
President, the chamber overruled the objection by the defense counsel. The question is allowed. And the quote is also allowed because that statement was made before the doctor said that she was mentally unfit. Therefore, Madam Witness, you are allowed to answer the question if you can still recall the question. Witness, yes, I can answer the question. At that time, I did not know who ordered the taking away of my husband, but Bong Su told me that Angka required to take the 3 individuals from France away. And Bong Su told me to keep it to myself, not to tell other people. And Ying Thiret said that she would go to see Bong, and I did not know who that Bong was, but I thought that it was probably Pol Pot. There were many Bong during that regime, and I did not know all the positions they held. And Bong Su told me that Ying Thiret would approach and requested to Bong to keep my husband. So Minh Pia went to see Bong in order to request to Bong to spare my husband. But later on, he disappeared. My husband was removed from the medicine production facility. He no longer worked there. And he was put to work in the documentation section of Minh Pia. Witness, my apology. I did not get the voice clearly from the other end. President, please wait a moment because there is some technical issue. witness. Yeah, there was technical issue because there was no voice and pictures.
បាទហើយដោយសារ
President, due to technical issue, the chamber would like to inform parties that it is now convenient time for the adjournment. The chamber will resume its hearing tomorrow, 22nd November 2016 from 9 a.m. The chamber will hear the testimony of 2 TCCP 223 in the morning and continue to hear the testimony of Madame Sithon via video conference in the afternoon. Madame Sithon, the chamber would like to thank you, and your testimony today is not yet concluded. You are therefore invited to come back tomorrow and testify at the same time. Madam Witness, is it tomorrow? Mr. President, yes, it's at the same time. It's start from 1:30 time in Cambodia. Security personnel are instructed to bring Khieu Samphan and Nuon Chie back to the detention facility and have them returned to the courtroom tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.